Thanks indeed for that introduction. I'm not sure that I can quite live up to it, but I'll do my best. I send a weekly message to staff in the Bureau. I didn't do it every week early this year. My February 25 message to staff had these words in it. I've been tardy in getting a message out to you, for which I apologise, but there's been a bit going on. In my last message in late January, I reflected on the effort that had been demanded of Bureau staff over Christmas. Little did I know that it would continue apace. Tropical cyclone Anthony crossed the North Queensland coast on the 30th of January, while the remnants of tropical cyclone Bianca crossed the West Australian coast near Perth, and severe tropical cyclone Zelia tracked near Norfolk Island. Severe tropical cyclone Yasi crossed the north coast near Mission Beach in Queensland not many days later in early February, causing widespread damage to the region between Innisfail and Townsville, including Tully, Ingham, Lucinda, Cardwell, caused by very destructive winds and storm surge. In the meantime, much of Victoria was being inundated. In the west at that time, 64 properties were destroyed and a further 32 damaged by bushfires near Perth on the 6th of February. More recently, tropical cyclone Carlos formed close to Darwin, causing record rainfall, localised flooding and damage associated with gale force winds. Tropical cyclone Carlos weakened below cyclone strength and moved southwestwards, however. It re-intensified in cyclone strength off WA's Kimberley coast, and as I write, on the 25th of February, remains as a Category 2 cyclone, fortunately now offshore to the west of Carnarvon. And I know I've not covered all that was happening across the country. My summary to staff: it's been busy. It's been a very, very busy year for the Bureau. Today in Sydney, the forecast maximum of 36, and we have total fire bans across the state. In Hobart, when I left our office here at 1 o'clock, it was 9.9 degrees. There was a sheep weather alert out, a bushwalkers alert, and snow forecast down to 800 metres. So yes, droughts and flooding rains and the rest. It's been a year and a half. So looking at the rainfall patterns, Australia was strongly influenced by the La Nina in 2010-11. It's amongst the four strongest events, along with 1917-18, 55-56 and 75-76, out of around 27 events since 1900. So Australia had the wettest spring on record, wettest December on record, and yet it was the driest year on record for southwestern WA. You can see here the highest on record, the darkest in blue, and the lowest on record, the darkest in red. Of course, we've heard a lot about the floods. I don't need to repeat a great deal, but here you can see again the rainfall, and on this side these are gauging stations on various rivers around the country. Red diamonds showing major flooding in the period November to January, green being minor flooding and moderate flooding in between. And you can see the southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales floods, those further up the coast near Rockhampton, and of course the Victorian floods right across the country. Of course, it didn't stop at the end of January. It's been a very wet end to summer in February. The purple here represents 4 times the average rainfall for the periods covered in purple. The dark blue, 3 to 4 times, the dark green, 1.5 to 2 times. So February continued. I live in Melbourne. Where I live, we normally have in the 3 months to end of January about 180 millimetres of rain. We'd had over 420, and there was a stage when we had water lapping at the back step. It's been a remarkable year. Of course, the La Nina brings an increased likelihood of tropical cyclones. We delivered our seasonal tropical cyclone outlook in late October and briefed the relevant state governments and authorities. The percentages here give the chances of an above average number of tropical cyclones in each of the 3 tropical cyclone regions. We have a tropical cyclone warning centre in Perth, the western region, one in Darwin for the northern region, one in Brisbane for the eastern region. And so those red percentages are the percentage chance at that time that we estimated of exceeding the long-term average. So for 2011, we forecast a higher number than the average, roughly a dozen cyclones, perhaps up to 20 or 22. Now, the peak of the cyclone season is February, March, but it extends through till April, so we have a way to go. And as I said, the historical record shows that La Nina events typically bring an above average number of tropical cyclones to the Coral Sea and Queensland coast. In part, this is associated with the well-established relationship between tropical cyclone formation and the threshold warm temperature required in the sea surface. And as it happens, this year to the north of Australia, the sea surface temperatures have been the warmest on record. So far then, we've seen 10 tropical cyclones, 17 tropical lows, and 4 tropical cyclones have formed off the Queensland coast this year. All that rainfall, of course, has indeed filled the catchments. And if you look at the capital city water storages and compare the circumstances, which you won't be able to read the numbers, but the 2010 compared to 2009 to the end of February, the right-hand bars are a year ago and the left-hand bars are this year. That water storage application, by the way, is on our website, and there's a version you can download to your iPhone. It simply emphasises the point that there's been a lot of water around. How did we go in forecasting the La Nina? As I said, in October last year, we briefed widely that we were in the midst of a strong La Nina. It's difficult to forecast from early in the year through what's called the boreal spring predictability barrier by some people, the Northern Hemisphere spring, the austral autumn. For some reason, the climate system's a little more chaotic in that period. However, we did a good job this year, and if you look at the April forecast from our dynamical seasonal prediction model, which runs a prediction every day of the month, and when you accumulate 30 runs day after day to give an ensemble. Back in April, we were suggesting that the sea surface temperature anomaly would go negative throughout the rest of the year, and it's in that negative range that we have the characterisation for La Nina. So the dynamical models have skill, and in this case, that skill was quite well expressed.